All right. Hi, guys. My name's Audrey. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am a psychic medium. I'm the salty psychic. You've heard of the Long Island medium, you've heard of the Hollywood medium. I am the salty psychic. That just goes with my personality. So you'll figure it out. If you're new, you'll know. I'm going to kind of adjust some things here a little bit. I'm having major technical difficulties for the last 15 minutes. I've had just an absolute disaster here on my end. But luckily I can cut that off the video and you'll never know. You'll never know what was going on here behind the scenes. But what I was saying was I apologize for not following through and doing the live show tonight that I had every intention on doing. I had mouth surgery again yesterday. I'm in pain. I'm in so much pain. I hate teeth, but I decided as far as my teeth go, I'm going to spend the money. I'm getting all the work done because I can't not have teeth. All right. I'm too young to not have teeth. So I'm putting in the work, getting that all done. And the bummer thing is, I'm getting an implant and an extraction on the 31st, which is the day Lori Vallow's sentencing happens. And I am so unhappy that I will probably not be online as that's happening. I'll try and get as much of it as I can. I have to leave my house around 10:30 in the morning. I'm an hour behind Idaho, so I'll come on alive for as long as I possibly can on the 31st, but I just don't know what I'm going to be able to do. I can't put off this implant again. I've been in trouble with the dentist. But anyway, I got to have teeth. I can't eat. You would think I'd lose weight. No, I can find lots of things that just swallow and just slide right down my throat that are delicious and not very healthy and high in calorie. So today I'm going to do a reaction video watching Tylee and JJ's Silver Linings podcast, which is with Lori's brother Adam and their uncle Rex. And, these guys get a lot of shit. They get a lot of crap because of who they're related to. And I continue to see them apologizing for various things, which I understand, but they don't need to apologize. They're on here answering questions to the best of their ability. Sure, I'm sure there's things that they're not gonna talk about or admit to. That's their business. But I am curious. I want to see what they have to say today in this episode number 4. This one's titled "Who Were Tylee, JJ, and Charles?" So we know that Tylee's the daughter, JJ's the little boy, and Charles was the father. So let's go ahead and come down here. Is this okay for you guys, or do you prefer that? Let's go with that for now. And I'll stop the video and pop in as I will share my 2 cents. All right, so let's go ahead and roll this video. It's about a half-hour video. All right, let's go.
My sister, Lori Vallow, murdered her children, Tylee and JJ, and buried them in a pet cemetery. And we're all trying to make sense of it. So let's talk about it.
Welcome back to our podcast. We're excited about this episode because we get to honor some people that are near and dear to us, but dear to millions of people because of this case and the wonderful media people that have shared this story so many times. People will notice on the title that we had a hard time deciding how to word the title. Do we say who are Tylee, JJ, and Charles, or who were? Obviously, they've passed. They were murdered tragically. Tammy was also. We just didn't know Tammy, so we can't honor her the same.
Right.
But want to acknowledge that.
So, and Brandon was shot at, almost killed. So there's that. Like we talked about this whole thing. There's a huge onion, and every time we talk about one thing, Rex, I feel like we're peeling back onion after onion. It never ends.
And then you have to acknowledge
just so many different
happens
because there's so much to talk about.
Exactly, there is, but this is one of the happier subjects we have to talk about in these podcasts. Tylee, JJ, and Charles. It's tragic that we're remembering them post-mortem, but we are happy to talk about them. What's a good memory you have of Tylee?
Tylee, when she was younger, she was something else. She was a firecracker. Well, I love to kiss Tylee's cheeks, and Tylee wasn't having it. So I remember as a kid, Tylee, I would kiss Tylee's cheek, and she goes, "Bubby, stop that!" And I was like, "Okay, you want me to take the kiss off?" She goes, "Yes." I was like, "Okay." So she put her cheek out, and I would kiss her again to take the kiss off. And then everybody would be like, "Tylee, you know he just got 2 kisses, right?" And she goes, "Bubby, why did you do that?" So Tylee was so. Sometimes people perceived her as harder on the outside, but she was a real soft, sweet spirit on the inside. And as she got older, into her teenage years, she really grew into a spectacular person. And we've had some really good conversations about all kinds of things. And I would love to try to make her laugh. So we would have family, get-togethers, and I would play games with like Tylee and our other cousin Austin and just different people. And during the game, I remember just saying just crazy stuff, and Tylee would just literally start crying laughing because of the stupid things that I would say. So I miss Tylee a bunch. And the last time I saw Tylee alive, I've told a few people this story, but she was at my mom's house when I found out that Charles was killed. And me and my son Zach walked in to the house, and Tylee was there. And at the time, I didn't know what was going on. In my mind and my heart, I felt like Charles was murdered. So the story that they went with was that Tylee had a baseball bat and was going to hit Charles, or try to hit Charles, and Charles took the baseball bat away from her and was going like this to Tylee. And that's why Alex shot Charles. That was the story. I didn't buy it from the get-go. I didn't buy that story. So when I walked in and I saw Tylee there, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if she was involved in it. I didn't know what was happening. She was standing there crying, and she was talking to my mom. And as me and Zach stood there, because me and Zach came there to talk to my mom about what just happened with Charles. Why has he been dead 3 days and nobody's called us and told us? So in my mind, I think everybody's involved in it, because I was left out in the cold, not knowing any of this. So I walked in blindsided, not knowing. Tylee's crying. My mom's trying to calm Tylee down and talking to Tylee. As me and Zach are sitting in the living room waiting for my mom, Tylee and my mom were in the kitchen, and they walked right past us. And I'm looking at Tylee. I want to say something to Tylee, but my mom keeps talking to Tylee. And Tylee keeps, she's crying, she's looking. And I felt my gut feeling is that Tylee wanted to tell me something. And as she walked to the end of the hallway, as I was just watching, and I didn't say a word, she stopped, and then my mom was talking to her, and then my mom walked her to the door, and then Tylee got in her Jeep and left. Never got to say a word to her. Then my mom came back in and screamed at me and Zach for not saying anything to Tylee. Do you know what that little girl has been through? I didn't know what was happening, but now that all this stuff has come out, I feel like if I could go back, I would have just stopped everything and just, Tylee, tell me what happened, just so I could hear her say it. Even if she was trying to protect Lori and saying what Lori told her to say or whatever it was, I would have loved that opportunity to be able to see her face and have her tell me that, so I can make a decision for myself what actually happened. So I do regret that day.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. But so much for the happy memory. You
Sorry.
went right to
Sorry.
You went right from the happy memory to that. But we do remember Tylee, of course, very fondly. Wouldn't you say she was just?
All right, let me just pause there for a real quick second. So Adam's upset because he didn't get an opportunity to talk to Tylee. And you can tell he feels bad about it. And often that's the case when our loved ones pass. A lot of times it's not planned, and things happen, people get sick, accidents happen, whatever, and we don't get to say goodbye or have that last conversation that we wanted to with our loved one. So something to remember is, as a psychic medium, I can tell you right now, 100% certainty, you can still talk to your loved ones. I talked to Tylee. I've talked to Tylee. And I've seen JJ. I haven't seen Charles, but I have had JJ and Tylee in my presence, and I've talked to Tylee. And so Adam should, as he's voicing his what's the word I'm trying to think of? His disappointment, and maybe even some shame, that he should know that Tylee can hear him. Tylee understands. Tylee doesn't have any judgment towards him. She 100% understands where he's coming from and where he was at during this time that day when she took off in her Jeep. So once she passes, there's no more of that bad feelings of, geez, Uncle Adam was just a jerk to me that day when he found out that Charles died or whatever. So just keep in mind, when our loved ones are gone and we didn't get to say goodbye to them, we didn't make it to their bedside in the hospital or whatever, you can still talk to them. They still hear you. And you don't need somebody like me to talk to them. You don't have to be a psychic medium. You don't have to be an empath. You don't have to be anything but a human being to talk to your loved ones who have passed. And although you may not feel like you get an answer, like, say, like a psychic would get an answer potentially, just know that they hear you. They do hear you, you guys. This is one of the biggest things I like to tell people. From having the gift and the abilities that I do, this is some of the best news out there. And I know it's painful when we lose somebody and we didn't get to say goodbye, but please, please, please understand they can hear you. And even if you don't say the words out loud and they're just thoughts in your head, it's still transmitting, just like microwaves or cell phone waves, or these wireless batteries charging things. It's all the same. It's all related. It's just science. I know people don't like mixing science and spiritual things, but that's the reality of it. It's there, and it is part of who we are as human beings. All right, so let's continue on. I think Rex is going to talk about Tylee.
That's the right combination as a teenager of sassy, sweet, and what's
super
the word?
smart. Was she
Smart?
super
Yes.
smart? She
Sassy,
was
sweet,
super
and smart.
Yeah. And it's, teenager.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
uh,
you can't really. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back. I jumped right into it. I was so excited to talk about them. I was supposed to introduce us, so someone coming to the podcast for the first time, who are these guys talking about these people?
yeah.
Adam is Tylee's uncle.
Yep.
I'm Tylee's great uncle. I'm Adam's uncle. I'm Tylee and JJ's great uncle. In our family, we call me Grunkle Rex for great uncle. We
Mhm.
just put those together. So I'm Grunkle Rex. Notice we're introducing ourselves, our relation to Tylee, not to Lori.
Mhm.
We're related to Lori. We aren't disassociating that. We aren't trying to hide that, but we like bringing memory to Tylee and JJ.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's where we like the focus to be. We recognize what Lori did and are as sickened at least as everybody else, if not more, with that.
Mhm.
Let's talk about JJ a little bit. And it's tough to talk about JJ without first acknowledging the role that Kay and Larry, JJ's grandparents, played in this whole scenario. We attribute them very appropriately as being the ones that got the ball rolling when they called for the a welfare check on Tylee and JJ. Otherwise, who knows?
Sorry, guys. Give me a quick sec.
How
Okay,
long it
sorry.
would have been. Who knows what the outcome would have been? Who knows how many more people would have died if finally media and law enforcement joined in to try to find missing children. So we always appreciate Kay and Larry for that, but Adam's going to give us some insight as there's another person involved in that.
Well, you know, Brandon Boudreaux was married to my niece Melanie, and Brandon played a big role in this. His marriage was wrecked because of Lori, in my opinion. And we'll talk more about that later. But Brandon is the one that really was, hey, where are the kids? You know, kind of thing. And Lori was just lying about, you know, the kids were here or the kids were there or whatever. So Brandon actually called Kay and Larry and said, hey, have you heard from JJ? I mean, and Lori would always have some kind of excuse. Kay would say every time she called to try to talk to JJ, Lori had an excuse of where he was or what he was doing. And so Brandon then was like, hey, you guys should call the police or something's got to be done. So Brandon actually told Kay, you should start doing this. And then that's when Kay and Larry just started like on a roll of trying to figure out where JJ and Tylee were. So, but with Kay, let's go back to Kay. Kay's been in the news a lot. She's always, talking to the reporters about things.
And Larry.
And
He's kind of become the face. Kay likes to be off to the side a little bit.
Yeah.
But she certainly isn't a wallflower by any stretch.
Right.
Very strong.
But,
person.
and they've been in the front of this whole thing trying to get justice for Tylee and JJ as they should.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when Charles was dead and I just found out on that Saturday, I was at my friend Eric's house and he had Googled Charles's name and it said that, Charles's brother-in-law killed Charles and he was dead. And I've talked about this before. I was in shock. I was at my friend's Eric's house. We were in his room with his whole family and we all found out together. My son Zach was there and it was like a punch to the gut. I remember just bawling, crying, and my stomach was in knots. And I thought, what in the world is happening? How could Alex kill Charles? And I started going on all these things. They're like, well, if they got in a fight, why didn't you just shoot him in the foot? Why did he shoot him and kill him? That doesn't make any sense. So at that point, I had my own thing. So I literally called Kay from Eric's bedroom. And I was like, I don't know if you know this or not, but Charles is dead. She goes, yeah, we just found out. Kay had just found out. I guess Lori or somebody reached out to Kay or I don't know but she said, we just found out. And at that point I was like, what happened? And so I think that Kay at that point was suspicious of me because I was part of this family. And so she didn't know what to say to me. And I was like, what is going on? And I told Kay, I think Lori and Alex murdered Charles. And she was like, I do too. So then at that moment, we both had a connection. So Kay and I started talking from that point forward about Charles's case and about what actually happened and what people believed happened and what really happened. And then from that point forward, I remember talking to Kay one night. She was in her house, and I think they live in Louisiana. And she was describing her house as she's got this huge living room with a huge window. And one night we were talking, and I was like, I'm scared that Alex may come try to kill you or me, or I don't know what he's capable of. I don't know what their plan is. Like, we both kind of had that discussion. And she goes, well, we have a big window here and I look out the window all the time and I don't want to be standing in front of the window because Alex could come by and shoot. And I did the same thing. I was living in Kansas and I checked my door all the time. I looked outside. Both of us were worried that Alex was going to kill us. Kay and I had that in common, even though we really, in the back of my mind, I was like, Alex has no reason to kill me. You can't get any money from me. You're not getting insurance money from me. So when I think of Kay, I think of she's been through a lot. Kay and Larry, both of them, they've been through a lot. They gave Lori and Charles JJ to raise. And Kay will talk about how great of parents Charles and Lori were to JJ until Lori made this change.
That is just compelling. I think all of us appreciate getting the insight from that story. A little bit off our topics for today, but I think a very important part of the story, and people in the comments, by the way, comments, please keep the comments coming. We haven't read all of them. We haven't gotten to all of them, but one comment is, are you going to have Kay and Larry on the show? And yes, they have agreed to come on the show. We just have to work out the timing, and of course we want them on the show. We're going to ask Brandon to come on the show.
Yes.
He's, going through legal stuff himself, or not himself, but his situation.
Yeah.
Of course, so I don't know how much you'll be able to talk.
But like we talked about before, about this show, and about, we just want to help people try to make sense of this. And because the story is so bizarre and it's so unheard of, and there's so many different layers to this onion, that every time we peel back an onion, there's something else that comes out that you probably want to know about to help make sense of this. Because sometimes things just keep popping up and you're like, well, who's this person? What is it? What were they doing? And there's so much.
There is. And
all right, I'm going to pause right there. So if you guys haven't already seen some of this video footage of when Charles was killed, you should watch it. It's on YouTube. It's very strange. At one point, you see Alex sitting out on the curb. I think he was waiting for the police. He had just killed Charles, and he said, I just killed this guy, and I'm just sitting here waiting for the police to show up. And Lori shows up with Tylee, and Lori's like, oh, hi, what's going on? And they're like, well, we're sorry to tell you Charles is dead or whatever. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to go. We're just going to go get some food or something. I mean, she's like super, super casual about Charles's death. It's very strange, but there's truth is stranger than fiction. I mean, if this was written into a movie or something, it would be like, oh, that's stupid. That's literally stupid. Who would do that? Oh, well, these real people would do that. So as I'm listening to these guys talk about when Charles was killed, it was a very, very, very strange scenario. And the police have Charles on body cam before the shooting, saying, and it was the night before, he's like, hey, this is my house. I'm locked out. My bank account's zero. My car is gone. My car's gone. It's just creepy. It's so creepy. But I would recommend catching up on these backstories of what led up to the murder of Charles and Alex and the kids. That way, when you're watching the sentencing, you may have a better understanding of why the hell she's going to spend the rest of her life in prison. All right, let's keep going.
We won't be able to get all of the detail in and everything we even want to. That's why we're writing a book. We'll be able to get more into that.
Yeah.
But even with writing a book, that doesn't mean we have answers or that we will have conclusions. We just want to share as much as we can to help as many people as we can that are going through what we're going through. That's trying to make sense of it all, trying to heal from it. So let's go back to talking about the people involved. We talked a little bit about Tylee. What's a good memory you have of JJ?
JJ just cracks me up. Having autism, and some of you listening right now have kids that have autism, and it can be very challenging. JJ, he went from not even, speaking or just having a really hard time with everything to just being a full functional kid that loved to play. He loves going to airports. Charles told me one time that Charles traveled a lot, and JJ packed his suitcase and was ready to go to the airport. So Charles sometimes would just drive JJ to the airport, walk around the airport, so JJ believed that he was going to fly somewhere, and he would have a suitcase with him full of stuff. But gosh, he was such a bright light. That little kid was always smiling, always happy. And I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot.
We love the memories and sharing the memories. I think Kay and Larry, of course, will have memories on JJ too. So I'll defer you more to them. It's so tragic that the children were killed. It's also a tragedy the adults were killed too.
Mm-hmm.
And while people that are familiar with the case know Charles's name, but not very many people know much about Charles because that hasn't come out in this. How would you characterize Charles just as a person?
Charles, loud Louisianan. Is that a word? But I'm loud too. So me and Charles got along great. Charles, he was happy. He was a conservative. He loved talking to me about, all the conservative things that are going on in the world. And he loved to do yoga. He made a steak every night. He would be on a grill making a steak. I remember one time my son, Zach, and Colby, Lori and Charles' son, well, Lori's son, were in the pool, and Charles was out, normal making a steak, and he had turned the charcoal on and then turned the gas thing on and threw the match in. Well, when he threw the match in, the fire went up and blew up in Charles's face, burned off all of his eyelashes and all of his eyebrows. And Zach and then he started just going crazy. And Zach and Colby were telling me, every time they tell me the story, they start crying, laughing because they were in the water, not knowing that he knew that they were there. They were just cracking up. But Charles is a big Dallas Cowboy fan. He loved football until people didn't stop standing for the flag, and then he'd stop watching football. So he was very opinionated. And he was always, hey, let's go do this. Let's go do that. He was nice to Lori. Every time I saw him, it seemed like him and Lori had a good marriage. And so, and he joined the church, and he told me that he had a testimony and he loved the church. And from where he came from, that was a huge step in his life, he said. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
You talked a little about his background. He is an athlete too, if you want to call ball players athletes.
Yeah, he played baseball, right?
Which we do. And semi-pro
baseball. Yeah.
And that comes to play in the story too with
the bat.
Yeah, the bat and
Al getting hit in the head.
Yeah, and many people say, and I believe him, if Charles would have hit Alex in the head, he would have had a little bump.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have had a little bump.
Yeah, so a lot of people bring that up as well, but but overall, I really enjoyed Charles. Every time I saw him, we had a really good time.
I have a few memories of Charles, and one, of course, Lisa and I, my wife, stayed with Charles and Lori when we were visiting Hawaii one time, and we went from the airport to the church because they were having an activity at the church. Lori was in charge of it, and there was JJ there, and JJ had like super upper body strength, yet he had this autism with special needs, incredibly high energy, and he would go around dismantling things. He was like a mini Hulk, and with this super strength, it was his stuff. He could dismantle anything.
Yeah,
and so he had to have eyes on him when he was awake, constantly, every second. And with Lori being in charge of the activity, most of that fell to Charles. And Charles, and this was true for our entire visit when we stayed with him, incredibly patient with him, just very willing to parent him, to be responsible, to teach him to be responsible the best he could. And sometimes he'd pass that off to Lori. I know people say, well, Lori couldn't have been a great mom if she had evil in her heart, and later killed him. Okay, I'll go with that comment. But from what I actually witnessed, they were both tremendous parents. And let's not leave Charles at, we talk about Lori because she's part of the case.
Yeah.
Well, they're both part of the case, but she is on trial.
Yeah.
They both exhibited that just as parents, just dedicated to JJ and Tylee. Tylee being a teenager, was a teenager and that's challenging for any teenager, any parents. They were both tremendous for both of them from our observations. We didn't get to see into their hearts,
Right.
what they're thinking, but our observations were that. So I just admired him to no end and just laugh, not belly laugh, but I was always amused, always entertained by Charles being as opinionated as he was,
Yes.
conservative as he was. It was always fun to listen to him. He didn't rant like no one was around and just saying what was on his mind, but he was definitely opinionated, and that was very, very enjoyable.
Yeah. So we talked about Tylee, we talked about JJ, we talked about Charles. Tammy, on the other hand, I never met Tammy. I didn't know Chad or Tammy, but they're also part of the story.
Mm-hmm. And we hope to have a guest on we've been in contact with that can tell us a little bit more about Tammy, because we like to acknowledge all the victims, and there are many more than the ones that have been murdered, but we want to acknowledge the ones that were murdered. It's such a tragedy. It's such a key part of this. And the silver lining to bring out from that is we can remember, as anyone departs, we can remember the good part of them, but it's such a tragedy when people are murdered, and the rest of that life is taken away from them. But it does give us more of an opportunity for an outpouring of love for their family members. We've experienced that, you and I have, and we weren't their parents. I mean, we weren't on the complete inner circle, but the love that's shared for something like that, the way it brings people together, to me, is a silver lining of the whole scenario.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about this story with the kids being killed, Charles being killed, Tammy being killed, and Brandon being shot at, almost killed, you figure, like, what kind of plan was this? And why are these people the people that were involved? Why was Tylee killed? Why was JJ killed? Why was Charles and Tammy killed? And you hear a lot of people have their own thoughts of why this actually happened. And you were in court, you got to see evidence and hear all these things that were presented. But my question to you is, as they were alive in this situation, is there anything that they could have seen coming, or that they could have, been more cautious of, or any of that? I don't know how that,
Yeah, I don't know, but I'll give you one hint. Again, this is public knowledge. On a phone call, I can't remember who Lori was talking to. It may have been Melanie, who knows. But she said, well, and Tylee's dark also. And Tylee was there. She was leaving to go somewhere. She said, oh, no, Mom, not me. And we heard from a friend of Tylee's that Tylee was scared. And I believe Tylee knew that if her mom was talking about her being dark, she is in danger. I believe that. I don't know that. Of course, I'm not in Tylee's mind either.
Right.
Charles knew that, I mean, Lori talked about murdering Charles to Charles. That's another comment we can bring up now. At least we can handle one of the comments. People said, well, Adam, if you knew that Lori was planning to kill Charles, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you go to law enforcement? Well, first of all, Lori's experience to law enforcement at that time, she talked to him. Law enforcement didn't do anything with her. And how could they? I'm not blaming law enforcement for that, but how could they do something at that point when she hadn't done anything? But I'll let you address that in a second. But the people that I don't think JJ, I don't know about Tammy. I would suspect she may have suspected something, but how do you wrap your hands around, I think someone's trying to kill me?
Right. Well, the thing about that is I heard that, in my opinion, she said that somebody took a shot at her with a paint gun or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure
We're talking Tammy now.
Tammy. I'm pretty sure that was Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's what the evidence showed.
Yeah. And so she knew somebody took a shot at her. And Chad, I think, had talked about that his wife was going to die early, and he's told other people all that stuff too. So the reason I'm asking is because I felt for myself, like somebody had mentioned, what could I have done different? How could I have stopped this? What could I have done as the brother watching this go down? And I remember telling my mom and dad, Lori is sick. There's something wrong with her. We got to get her help. And they said to me, Lori is a grown woman. You cannot force her to go to a therapist. She's living in some kind of delusion, and just let her be. That's what I was told.
I believe they said she's not doing any harm. Good heavens, she's going to the temple 5 hours a day and reading her scriptures the rest of the day.
Right. And so that was their perception of Lori. So when people say, well, why didn't you do anything? Or if you notice, I mean, I did say stuff to people. I don't know what else to do. Charles told the police officer in front of his house, my wife is crazy. She said she's going to kill me. Nobody took any of that serious.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's a lot to it's a lot to take in, but
it's another layer of the onion, isn't it?
Yeah, there's so much things that you look back at it, my whole thing is, if the police in Chandler would have investigated Charles's death more, like they found out later that he was executed because there was another shot if they would have done that at the beginning, and then people say that all the time, if they would have done that at the beginning, Alex would have been in jail. Lori would have been in jail. Chad would have been off trying to find another girl to try to marry and try to be part of his group, right? And the kids would be alive. There's scenarios that people talk about that all the time.
Yeah, and I'm of the camp that I would like to hear from law enforcement, because I try to envision, how can you what was there at the time? Not being there, I don't know. I'm not too quick to judge law enforcement's failure. And I always go back to, well, if Chad and Lori just would have chosen not to murder people,
right,
they'd all be alive.
No doubt.
So I don't want to, I wouldn't want to pin it on law enforcement.
I will say this, with my experience, the last person to text Charles alive was me. Mm-hmm. Him and I were texting back and forth. The fight that Lori said to the police officers, the fight was Charles. I took Charles's phone and I was going through his phone. They left the phone with Lori. Mm-hmm. The police did not even take the phone. They didn't call me. I had to call them 3 months later and said, are you ever going to talk to me? Does anybody want to know my side of what happened? If you're investigating a murder and you see a killing,
right?
Why didn't they at least look and say, oh, well, this is the last person. Let's call him and find out. Mm-hmm. Nothing. And they left the phone with Lori for hours and hours later.
Days, I think. 3 days.
So I don't want to blame anybody. I'm just saying there's a lot of people have this conversation that certain people would still be alive if this particular thing happened. Yep. But like I said, with this onion, emotions, anger, embarrassment, hurt, all these emotions that I have, that's why we're doing this podcast, mostly for me to get therapy, I guess. This is my therapy. Well, we are out of time for this episode.
All right. Well, that's the end of that episode. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of what ifs. Monday morning quarterback. Like, we should have seen this coming. if law enforcement only did this or that. Yeah. I mean, it can't all be pinned on law enforcement, but certainly some things to look at and to, I don't know if laws need to be changed to um, force an investigation if someone says something specific that could potentially be a future murder setup thing. So it's a very, very involved. This is so awful. I think these guys are doing a good job. You can tell they have a lot to undump, and we'll be here to watch them dump it. And it's interesting. So that's all I have for now, you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, share the video. And if you get a chance, go back and watch some of those Lori Vello Daybell videos. They're interesting. Like I said, stranger than fiction a lot of times. And this is certainly a case that makes me think of that phrase. So you guys have a great, great weekend. I'm going to stay up late and get this up to YouTube tonight. And I'll see you guys real soon. All right. Take care, you guys. Love you. Bye.